I want my government to be as environmentally friendly as it can be. I also want men and women treated equally. If a woman can do a job, she should have every chance to do it. But the role of the military is different and really important. We need them to keep us safe, to kill terrorists, dangerous work. Yet watching media reports, you might think the greatest challenges that the military faces are environmentalism and sexual violence.
A serious problem in the U.S. military, sexual assault.
Is sexual assault a crisis in the military?
Oh, I think it is.
I think so. The Pentagon, which has been under fire in recent years over sexual assault.
Last year, we had a 50% increase in sexual assault reports.
A 50% increase in sexual assault would be a terrible thing, but what's the truth? Aaron MacLean just got out of the Marines, and so he's now free to speak openly about something he once told me privately. He says, we are less able to fight now because the military has become obsessed with political correctness.
I think that's right, John. And the issue surrounding talking about these issues really is toxic in the military right now.
But a 50% increase in sexual assault sounds bad.
It indeed would be bad, John. And in fact, there's a lot of... There is sexual assault in the military. There's sexual assault in the military. There's sexual assault in American campuses. There's sexual assault in American society. And even one case of sexual assault is too many, right? But I think something that the left has been very good at is politicizing this issue and really shifting the focus to this issue.
The increase may be because it's in the news and so more people report everything.
I think that's a big part of that. And in fact, the DOD even said before those numbers came out to anticipate an increase because they've been pushing for greater disclosure, which of course then becomes an argument for the fact that it's a crisis.
And when I think of sexual assault, I think of men forcing themselves on women. But Senator Barbara Boxer made a point to say this.
People forget that half of the victims are men.
Yeah.
So it's not a women's issue. It is a violence issue.
So this sounds like it's gay violence, man on man.
Right. So I think of a young 19-year-old Lance Corporal standing his post in Afghanistan and listening to things like this, listening to the President and Secretary Hagel tell graduating classes at the Naval Academy that the biggest challenge they will face in their military careers is eradicating sexual assault. And I think he thinks that we are all crazy. I don't think that this is a big part of his experience. I speak from some experience on my own there.
And as you pointed out, the statistic that Boxer quoted came from one survey, an anonymous internet poll asking about not assault but unwanted sexual contact.
Right. So the hardest numbers that we have on this issue, which are the numbers that actually cover the sexual assaults that have been reported, either as a crime or as restricted reports, which is where you sort of notify the authorities but you don't want to prosecute it. Those numbers, perhaps distressingly, but it just is what it show, not counterintuitively, that the majority of victims are female and the majority of perpetrators are male.
All right. There's been a move to get women into combat. Why not if they can do it?
So this is another issue that's very difficult to talk about in the military right now. It's important to point out that men and women have been fighting alongside each other in the military for years, I think decades at this point. You can see this in the aviation community. I think there are studies that actually show that females are better at being fighter pilots than men. I'll leave that to my fighter pilot friends to debate. But what's new and radical right now is the push. Well, in fact, it's been decreed by Secretary Panetta when he left. That
year 2016.
That's right. Men and women will fight side by side in ground combat units. So
what's wrong with that?
Well, there are a number of problems with it. The first is simply the physical disparity between men and women. Now, there's an argument to be made. It's got a lot of merit that surely there will be some women who can meet the standards and they should be allowed to serve, right? The problem, among the problems with that, is that what I'm hearing from friends of mine who work in training programs both for the Marine Corps and in the Special Operations community is that there's tremendous pressure coming from Washington to look at their training standards and, in sort of the bureaucratic language of Washington, evaluate whether certain training events and certain standards are really necessary. Analysts come out from the Pentagon, from Washington, look at your training program and say, yeah, is that really necessary? What battlefield skill does that really demonstrate? And the subtext here is, in Washington, people are very concerned about making sure that women will graduate from these programs. Now, the women themselves who want to serve in these units don't want the standards lowered. This is not being driven by them. This is a very top-down, very politicized issue.
And now the military's been given another politically correct goal, green energy.
The Air Force flew an A-10 Thunderbolt entirely on alternative fuels. The first for the military.
Yippee! What's wrong with that?
So I have some experience of this. My experience is in the department where we have now the Great Green Fleet, which is a fleet powered by renewable energy and algae and all this sorts of stuff. I think that the problem, again, is a problem of focus. Fossil fuels, nuclear power are established sources of energy. They're cost effective.
This other stuff is more expensive, less available, less reliable.
All of these things. And in fact, again, there's no groundswell, there's no grassroots desire for this stuff amongst the people who are actually fighting.
$150 a gallon, 64 times retail price.
When I was about to deploy to Afghanistan, we had to go to a meeting, all the officers in my battalion, to discuss the use of solar panels when we were deployed. And it struck us that, well, maybe this will work. It seems like a lot of effort for little gain, but maybe it'll work in Afghanistan. What happens when we go to a place where there's trees and rain and everything?
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for speaking out. Coming up, terrorists are eager to blow up American airplanes. That's why